Welcome back. Today, we're diving deep into a question that's at the very heart of everything we do as tax professionals. How do you correctly classify income? We're going to break down Section 13 of the Income Tax Act, 2025, the one that lays out the entire framework for this critical first step.
All right, let's just jump right into a situation you've probably seen 100 times. Your client comes in and they've got income from everywhere, right? Salary, some rent from a flat, profits from share trading, it's all there. So you're looking at this pile of documents, and the big question isn't how much tax. The first question is, where do you even begin?
And the answer? The only answer is classification. You see, before you even think about calculating anything, exemptions, deductions, the final tax figure, every single rupee of that income has to be properly classified. And let's be clear, this isn't just good practice, it's the law. It's a non-negotiable step one.
So this is the challenge we're tackling today, dealing with all these different income streams. How does the law manage to bring some order to what can feel like total chaos?
You know, a great way to picture this is to think of a messy desk. It's just covered in all these different financial papers. The law, well, it basically says you can't just bunch them all up and add the numbers together. No way. It forces you to create a perfect filing system first. Every single one of those papers needs its own specific folder.
So where does this filing system come from? Well, that's where the law steps in. And the master key, the one piece of legislation that unlocks this whole process, is Section 13 of the Income Tax Act 2025.
And Section 13 is incredibly direct about what it does. Its whole job is to set up a mandatory system for sorting all income into specific buckets. That's it. It's the absolute first step you have to take before you can even start to compute total income and figure out the final tax.
Now look at the actual wording from the Act. It says all incomes shall be classified. That word shall is everything. It's not maybe or it would be nice if, it's shall. That's what makes this a command, not a suggestion. It's the rule that sets the stage for everything else.
Okay, so if Section 13 is the master key, what does it actually open? Well, it opens what you can think of as the official filing cabinet of taxation, and inside there are 5 and only 5 specific drawers. The law calls these the 5 heads of income.
And here they are, the big 5. First up, salaries. Pretty straightforward. Then, income from house property. That's your rental income. Next, profits and gains of business or profession, which we all just call PGBP. Fourth is capital gains from selling assets. And last but not least, income from other sources, which is kind of the catch-all bucket for anything that doesn't fit in the first 4. And it's so important to get this right because this isn't just about being tidy. Each of these heads has its own set of rules, its own deductions, and sometimes even its own tax rates. So mixing them up is a big no-no.
Okay, so that's the theory. But let's see how this actually works in the real world. We'll take a look at a quick case study to see how this classification plays out.
All right, let's look at Mr. Sharma's finances. First, his salary from ABC Limited. Easy, that goes straight into the salaries bucket. Next, the rent from his apartment. That's income from house property. Simple. The profit from his consulting business. That's a textbook case of profits and gains of business or profession. Then he sold some shares. That profit is a capital gain. And finally, that little bit of interest from his savings account. That's what income from other sources is for. See how every single piece has its place? It's a perfect example of that filing system in action.
Now, for us as professionals, knowing what the 5 heads are is just the start. The real test is the how. How do we make sure we get it right every single time and avoid some really common and costly mistakes? Because trust me, if you get this first step wrong, it can create a massive domino effect through the entire tax return.
So let's talk about what not to do. One of the biggest mistakes we see is people putting business income under other sources, maybe to try and skip some of the more complex reporting. Big mistake. Another one is mixing up deductions, trying to claim a business expense against salary income, for example. It just doesn't work that way. So what's the best practice? Be meticulous. Always classify based on what the income actually is. Keep clean, separate records for each head. And a good rule of thumb? If you're ever unsure, just start at the top with salaries and work your way down the list.
For rock-solid compliance, just remember these 2 things. First, documentation is everything. It's absolutely non-negotiable. And second, be consistent. Unless the nature of the income has genuinely changed, your classification should be consistent from one year to the next. And why is this so critical? Because this first step, it determines everything else. the deductions you can claim, the tax rates, even which ITR form you need to file. It all starts here.
All right, let's wrap this up by boiling it all down to the most important takeaways from Section 13.
When you think of Section 13, I want you to remember just one number: 5. That's it. These are the 5 pillars that hold up the entire income computation process.
So let's quickly recap. Section 13 is mandatory, it's not optional, it's the very first step. Every single bit of income has to fit into one of those 5 heads: salaries, house property, PGBP, capital gains, or other sources. Why? Because that classification impacts your deductions, your tax liability, everything. It's the framework that brings order and logic to the whole messy world of tax computation.
So I'll leave you with this question. Now that we've gone back to the basics and reinforced the what and why of income classification, how is this going to change the way you look at that next complex file that hits your desk?
Thank you so much for watching. If you found this explainer helpful, please do like, subscribe, and maybe share it with others in your network. It really helps.
And just a quick disclaimer, this explainer is for educational purposes only, and it's not professional advice. Tax laws can and do change, so please, always consult your professional advisor before taking any action. This is an AI-generated educational video.